There's a lot of games in here, and I want to make a tier list for what I consider to be the top 10 visuals in fighting games, visuals slash graphics. In 2025, you think about visuals, what old games still look really good? I'm not going to put any Street Fighter 2s in here because I think they did look good at the time, but they look dated and aged by this point. I think you really got to start considering overall visuals and how do they still look good nowadays. So let's not do like the Naruto games and Tenkaichis, like all the arena games, just to keep it more focused. Right at the top, yeah, let's throw in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I'll definitely do that. Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, probably not. Street Fighter 6, I think, has reasonable contention. I think we're willing to talk about that. I would almost have to give Tekken 3 some props. Damn, Smash Ultimate does have really good visuals. I'm gonna put that in here just to think about. It's not a full nomination. I'm definitely putting this in here. I would nominate New KI, maybe not the older ones. They still look a little dated nowadays. CVS2 TVC, of all the MVC games, bro, I probably would nominate Marvel vs. Capcom 1 of having the strongest visual identity of all of these. Ultimate Marvel 3 also looks really good. I have to put that on there. Nothing over here. Well, that game's pretty good looking. I would say this is worth putting in here for conversation, and as well as Xrd. I think I'd like to put DOA 2 in here at least to consider that. Of all the DOAs, the most crazy one that blew your mind visually was kind of like DOA 2. 13, please, for sure. VF2 for sure. Still looks insane nowadays. This was like, oh my god, video games are fucking real sort of shit with Soulcalibur 1. All the rest of the games sort of like are good looking visually, but also are like, you know? Oh. Yeah, I would put Vampire Savior up here for best visuals. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm pretty happy with the list of visuals from all of these games. I'd put Multiverses in there for visuals? I would like to include Tekken 8 because I like Tekken 8's visuals, okay? But the game's a little messy. I think Tekken 8 sort of has an issue of too much visual fidelity mixing with its overall art style. And because of it, a lot of the way, it's not just a bitrate problem, like it's the collision of so much hyper detail on stuff becomes a little bit too much. It's like the vascularity of some of the characters collides a little too much with all the detail. I think a game like Street Fighter 6 manages that a bit better, where they take away a lot of that crazy detail in some of those situations so that the characters just stand out more. So that you just see more of the character and more from them from the background, you know? When in Tekken, it can look a little visually clustered, personally speaking. But I like Tekken 8, but this is not a gameplay situation. This is a visual situation. So let's try to boil this down to a top 10. How many games did we get in here? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I got 20 games in here. Shit. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Why would you throw up in my mouth? I think MVC 1 might be the first one that I take out of here. Might be the first one. Well, one of the better looking 2D Marvel vs. Capcoms, probably the best looking. I think there are other 2D games up here that probably deserve the spot. And I think I'm gonna take Smash Ultimate out of here. Smash Ultimate has a wonderful art style, but it's a game that has great visuals, but it isn't like the thing about it that really, I think, puts it over the top. The sheer amount of content is the thing that sort of makes it feel exemplary. It's great looking, but it's not like, god damn, the art style, like the visuals. There's a lot of great visual storytelling, but I don't think it deserves to be in top 10. And I'd say the same thing for KI. I love the way KI looks, but it is kind of hit or miss depending on different parts of the game. Do I want to keep Fatal Fury or Last Blade 2? I think I would probably put Garou over Last Blade 2 by a little bit. And since we're trying to get the top 10, I think that's about right, you know? Here, I'm going to take out Last Blade 2. Great looking game. There's 3 that are battling in my head right now. Tekken 3, DOA 2, and Virtua Fighter 2. And because of all 3 of them sort of being in a similar, well, somewhat similar time frame, somewhat early 3D era, I think Tekken 3 looks the best of all these, personally speaking. But I think DOA 2 overall has like a really great visual style to it. I think I'll take Tekken 3 out. Yeah, I like the way Tekken 3 looks, but I think other games look better. You know what? Oh man, I think I'm actually going to go with DOA 2. Yeah. I'm going to take Virtua Fighter 2 out of here. I'm sorry, VF heads, because this is almost unfair because this game was like 5 years after this game, bro. Yeah, I think DOA 2 is just crazy looking, dude. It's insane how good that game still looks. And Virtua Fighter 2 is like, in Tekken 3, to me, they're impressive. They're impressive how good they look, but DOA 2 blows my mind. Like, rock solid, 60 FPS, like that kind of shit, you know? I don't think I want to take Soulcalibur off here because this is the game that changed video game graphics, period. And it was a fighting game, dude. This was the game that did it, man. And in terms of the old 2D games, do I like the visual stylings of XRD over Guilty Gear X in total? You know what? I think I do. Because this game was also mind-blowing, right? We have actually several games up here from Arc System Works that almost better represent where those games eventually go, where their art style that they developed with Guilty Gear Xrd and becomes exemplary, where it's just like, this is some of the best looking shit I have ever seen, you know? Where they just keep getting better and better. And to me, it sort of like bumps one down. So in that retrospect, this list would just be 10 Arc System Works games and nothing else, like, to be completely honest. But I'm thinking that there needs to be like levels of prowess to this. Yeah, DNF Duel looks better overall, I guess, than most of these games do. Because there is so many games that Arc System Works has done in those visual stylings, I think there are others that are clearly better than others and shouldn't just destroy all the other ones, you know? That being said, I'm taking off XRD, which is really hard because this is the GOAT, in my opinion, that started it all. But Dragon Ball's up here and Granblue Fantasy Versus is up here because I think they are better representations of what that art style eventually becomes. Like, these two games are just crazy looking, dude. They are insane. Yeah, I think I gotta take out Street Fighter 6. At this point, it's gotten very far, and it's a great, great looking game that is even looking better as time goes on. Here's what's crazy. Here's what I'm also taking out. Ultimate Marvel 3. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I think Ultimate Marvel 3 is a great looking game, an art style that's definitely carries itself, but I can understand how Marvel 3 does not have just incredible like visuals overall. And I can see why people would think that, you know? I dig it, you know, I dig it, but it's not a game that is like, oh, this entirely is just absolutely goated from visuals. You know what? Yes, and you just reminded me. I'm putting Street Fighter 6 back up here. This game deserves credit for some things that are a little crazy and a little bit too detailed and can get a little muddy. I'm gonna give Street Fighter 6 the biggest flowers, and you have reminded me. This arguably has the best rendered humans in a game I've ever seen. But in terms of like the character detail and complexity of the models, of what they're doing from quite literally a biological standpoint of all of these things sort of colliding and working together and muscles and all of this stuff is just like, yeah, we see it in other games and it's kind of linear and it's just this like buff or not buff. And dude, like you literally see the vascular swelling of a character's bicep and shit like that. And it isn't just from point A to point B. You see characters flex and their veins come out and all of this other crazy shit happens that looks really natural. And it doesn't look like they have like reverse body fat. You know what I mean? So I'm keeping 6 up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Shit! I have to take DOA 2 out, unfortunately. At this point, I have to take DOA 2 out. Because to me, the other game that lines up with it is Soulcalibur. These games came out around the same time. And there's one game that looks way better. Soulcalibur looks way better. And you know what I also think goes by the wayside at this point? Unfortunately, I wanted to see if it can make top 10, but I just feel too profoundly about some of the other 2D games in here. From a 2D standpoint, because 2D games have to be represented up here, it's X. Yeah. Which applies all the way to like Accent Core, right? Because they use all the similar sprites and everything like that. Darkstalkers? Bruh. This is where my brain is currently going. We probably pissed off many people at this point. Let's start talking about it. And yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna boil it down. Let's not say this is the best of all time. This is the games that I think just look the best and blew me away from like a visual standpoint. Just absolutely blew me away. What is number 10? I actually think Street Fighter 6 is number 10. For the amount of like absolutely gorgeous character rendering that it happens, we just glazed it up all over the place. Yeah, it has some of like the best rendered characters I've ever seen. Some of the ways the characters like collide with the backgrounds, I don't think is great. And I think that it tries to ride this art style of like hyper realistic to sort of like really animated looking characters. I think it does it pretty good. But some of like the backgrounds and some of the way the overall visual presentation of everything in the game, the way it all comes together, it is so exemplary in one area that I think it deserves mentioning, because fighting games are about characters, right? But I have my reasons to think that not everything comes together in the most eloquent way. There is another game that I think takes the very realistic looking characters and executes very realistic looking characters with great backgrounds and great looking specials and visuals, even though it's a game that I absolutely despise playing. I wish my favorite Mortal Kombat game looked like MK11. I go back and I look at footage of MK11 now, and that shit looks like a sequel to MK1. You go back and I look at things like the intro and outro animations, like the fatal blows of all these characters and stuff, and it just blows my mind. It blows my mind how good it looks. And then they sort of change it a bit in MK1 and it has higher fidelity, but I think just the execution, characters look so cool, dude. And their faces look so cool. Everything about them. There's one thing in MK1 I didn't love. Character faces don't look nearly as cool. I think they have more fidelity, but I think the overall like visual presentation, yeah, some animations are goofy, don't get me wrong. Spawn like ripping up the arms of Malbolgia and all this shit, and fucking RoboCop doing all of this, and it looks so realistic. It's crazy. Like for a game that always is about emulating realism from the old digitized graphics, which are a variety of good looking and bad looking, MK11 blows my mind that was made on Unreal Engine, modified Unreal Engine 3, good point. I will never talk shit about the visuals in MK11. I will never do it. I think that game from a visual standpoint is mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. I'm gonna say number 8 goes to Skullgirls. I think Skullgirls, I think it's also one of those games that will have an art style that will be obviously deeply appreciated for anybody that loves the medium, right? For anybody that loves what Skullgirls is crafted from like a visual handcrafted art style with an insane amount of attention to animation and so much detail and time and money. My biggest issue with Skullgirls is that obviously the character designs will either be for you or not for you. I think they're great looking, but I think Skullgirls can get a little jumbled with the backgrounds and the foreground elements. Some parts of Skullgirls, from like when all of the action is happening and all the assists are coming out and doing stuff, it could be very tough to sort of like follow it because of how much animation is happening all at the same time in the same space. And I can appreciate how insane looking it is, and it's so beautiful and nuts. I think because of the composition of it being a 3v3 game, it sort of collides with how beautiful it is, you know? So to me, in some ways, it's like, I don't mind some 3D games having less animation because there's just almost too much to look at when all of this shit is happening. When all of that stuff is going down against a bunch of backgrounds with a lot of characters, it can feel a bit busy. Again, I think it's one of the best looking fighting games I have ever seen. Yeah, I think for a personal list, I would put Garou right here. Pretty much the quintessential high quality visual fidelity 90s era SNK game, where this is just the one that everyone sort of goes to. It's one of the things that made me not want to put City of the Wolves on here, because Garou's got such a feel to it, such like a great identity of how it looks and feels. But you compare that edge that the game has to even modern games like Fatal Fury, right? The new Fatal Fury. It doesn't really have that edge, you know? It's weird. Like, they are games with similar characters in a similar span, but something about like the new Fatal Fury just doesn't have that edge that like Garou kind of has, where it feels like there's just personality everywhere. It's got a lot of it, don't get me wrong. I think like Fatal Fury just has a great look and feel to it. They still cannot emulate the animation of like pants, you know, and clothing and movement and secondary movement on characters. There's just so much of it all over the place, and they were trying their ass off, bro. They were literally working their ass off to really go up against the grain, which was Capcom at the time and what they were doing with the Street Fighter III series. I will put Soulcalibur next. It's hard to explain because you look at it now and people go, wow, that game looks really good for 1999. And then until you compare it to other games in the time frame, it sort of like makes you realize how ahead it was. I think Soulcalibur is like one of the best looking old games of this era. Like there's not a ton of 3D game representation in here, obviously, but Soulcalibur is like the only old 3D game that I think stands. It still looks so, like, from an artistic standpoint, gorgeous. From a character design standpoint, gorgeous, dude. From the levels and the visuals and the lighting and everything, it's just crazy how good this stuff looks. To me, it even eclipses DOA 2. If I had to compare the two together, I think DOA 2 is also a little bit later than Soulcalibur 1 was, because this is also 1999. I think DOA 2 is a little bit after that, maybe right around a similar time frame. But if we're to compare the two, I think what Soulcalibur does with its lighting is way more impressive than even what DOA does, and DOA has some really good lighting. Soulcalibur was mind-blowing, dude. It literally felt like arcades are useless. Like, it's a detriment now because we feel like Soulcalibur was kind of the beginning of the death of arcades. The reason you went to arcades is because they had the best looking games you could ever see. If you wanted to feel what it was like to play real next generational sort of games, you went to the arcade and you paid a quarter to 50 cents to play it. Soulcalibur ended that shit. It wasn't like our ports of Street Fighter and KI at home. Like, these are pretty good. Soulcalibur was way better looking than the arcade was, and also was one of the best looking games, like, period. It looks better than most PS2 games, dude. I think if there's one game up here that was just mind-blowing from a visual level and was pretty much sold itself on its visuals, even now to this day, I think Soulcalibur is legit that game. So much so that it gets to the top of some of our other lists. Like, no shit, the actual top. I would not mind Soulcalibur being just straight #1 of best fighting game ever because of visuals and stuff like that. I think this is where KOF 13 goes. Yeah. And dude, it's KOF 13. I have issues with KOF 13. I don't love its roster. I think it has a pretty good KOF roster, but I think there's many other KOF rosters I like more. I like the roster in KOF 14 more, man. It doesn't change the fact that KOF 13 is insane. From a visual standpoint, just absolutely mind-blowing how good this shit looks. And we looked into a bit of the history of how it looks. They pretty much created 3D models and like rotoscoped over the characters. It's the exact same method that BlazBlue did with their 2D character sprites, where they make 3D characters and then pose them and sort of draw over them for a sprite reference. It sank the company, long story short, because they were built on the sprites from KOF 12. They made a whole bunch more. It was a very expensive process. That being said, you see it. Like, from a visual standpoint, dude, KOF 13 is just insane looking. And I go back and look at it. The backgrounds in that game, man, holy shit. And unfortunately, it's almost sad because all modern SNK games are sort of in the shadow of what was, by many considerations, like the best looking SNK 2D game they have ever made. I feel kind of bad for them because they pretty much spent all of the money of the whole goddamn company and sank themselves making this shit. And now they're making a whole bunch of more fighting games, but they're always in the shadow of like one of the best looking games they've ever made. You know what I mean? And now I think I put Vampire Savior at number 4. Yeah. Easily one of the best 2D games. It's a love letter to 2D animation. It's a love letter to cartoony animation, you know? Like, there's a lot of crazy cartoony animation in Skullgirls where they really do a lot of crazy, like, 2D, old school 2D effects in this. But Vampire Savior relishes in it, dude. Almost Looney Tunes. Like, let's just make characters sexy and violent and also Looney Tunes. Like, that does not seem like a thing that lines up with each other, my dude. That doesn't really feel like stuff that lines up. It works beautifully. It's also a reason why I think Vampire Savior will likely never work in 3D. You know? Like, we've seen some of these characters translate over to 3D, and Morrigan is just sexy. You know, we see her in modern games. She loses all of her, like, crazy pizzazz that she has from the vampires from the Darkstalkers series. We've seen the way some of these characters look. Felicia, we've seen Shenko, you know, we've seen a lot of them represented in 3D, and they just look like characters now. They lose their crazy, cartoony, almost Looney Tunes animations which are held and reserved in the Darkstalkers games. So to me, there's a reason why Vampire Savior still goes down as some of like the best looking, one of the best looking video games I've ever seen, man. The backgrounds get way better, the visuals get way better, the overall design of everything looks so crazy good. The character designs are so powerful, man. It is Capcom almost at their absolute quintessential finest from a visual standpoint. Unfortunately, there's another Capcom fighting game that exists in a very similar time frame that is actually the best. That goes above this, you know what I mean? I think the next best looking fighting game is DBVSR. I do, man. I do. I'll just say it. I don't love the way all the characters look in GBFSR. I don't love the Granblue designs in total. I think a lot of them look really cool. I think a lot of them look way too much in some ways, but holy shit, man. I cannot believe the attention to detail in every single frame of every single animation of every super of absolute of every. It is crazy. It even is higher detail than games like Dragon Ball and Strive, and it feels like, dude, how much money is Side Games giving you guys? Because holy shit, man. I think Granblue Fantasy vs. Rising looks even better than Tokon. Like, no kidding. It's crazy that that game came out in like 2020, like around that time frame. It's nuts, dude, how good looking Granblue looks. The visual fidelity of the game like hurts me. And I wish I like loved it as much as everything else, but I really didn't like the early Granblue. In Versus Rising, it became a much more fun game. But to me, I can always give it credit. Like, I can't believe how good this looks. Like, even some other games like Guilty Gear Strive look incredible, and I love the way the character designs are in that way more. But to me, if we're talking about like the ultimate looking from a raw visual standpoint, like raw visually, how good Granblue Fantasy Versus looks, it's mind-blowing. So, here we go, top two. I think the number 2 is Third Strike. I would love to put it as number 1. Third Strike from a visual standpoint is just insane, dude. It's got a bunch of weirdo looking characters, and it's crazy that you can go back to the previous 2 games in the series. You can go back to Second Impact and New Generation. Both great looking games, don't get me wrong. There is something crazy that happens between Second Impact to Third Strike that actually really eases in the animation frames, like whether it's hit stun values or block stun values, anything, where the combat just looks so friggin' clean. Something about every interaction, everything that happens, every parry, every moment, every throw has so much weight and heft. It feels like these characters are beating the shit out of each other. Something about it like does not ever get emulated again in most games. And it's 2D, and it feels like all these characters are so well represented in their world. They have weight in their world, man. The way every character works, the way when Hugo walks, like the environment around him bounces up and down and shit. The way things in the background collide with the foreground. There is foreground elements all over the place that just sell the animations from everything, dude. It makes me so happy that I can introduce people that have like never seen older fighting games before and are new fighting game fans, and they go back and they look at Third Strike and they're like, bro, how does this game look so good? What the hell's going on? Why does this old game look so good? Why does it look better than the new games? I'm like, yeah, that's Third Strike, all right. Doesn't change the fact that it's actually not the best. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ is the best looking fighting game ever made. Straight up. And here's the thing. Here's how you know I'm not bullshitting you. Dragon Ball FighterZ is the best looking fighting game ever made. From like a presentation standpoint, to visuals, to character execution, to effects, to everything. The actual fights that transpire, and the impact and weight of the fights that transpire. You would think that Dragon Ball FighterZ would be something that would not gel with me. You would think that the execution of what is almost like a one-to-one recreation of the show and the movies that it came from and the mangas that it came from would not be a good representation of like best looking visuals in fighting games just in general. But you're wrong. It's the best. It's the absolute best. In my opinion, there are many things in Dragon Ball FighterZ when I look at its comparison to the show, I go watch the thing that it is compared to, and I go look at the shows or the movies or the direct moments in the mangas, and I look at it happen in Dragon Ball FighterZ from a frame-by-frame standpoint, and it blows my mind, dude. Outside of some moments in, like, obviously, like, the DBS Broly movie, no kidding, I legit think that some stuff in Dragon Ball FighterZ looks better than some of the movies and better than some of the shows. Maybe not in its totality, but in the reference material, it's it's pulled from, it legit feels like, holy shit, man, this stuff is on another level. They cared so much. How did they care so much? I'm not even talking about all the insane extra flourish of like the characters and the animations. I am not even talking about the characters transitioning from one stage to the next, getting blasted off a thing, flying into a mountain, the other characters come back, the other characters do this, the supers, the interactions between characters at times, the collisions of all the attacks, the hit sparks, everything, bro. The speed at which the characters are moving. My God, dude, the way the camera works to accentuate all this stuff, the goddamn dramatic finishers that happen only every once in a while. They'll almost never happen in competitive versions of the game. A wild, dumbass, like huge Dragon Ball thing that happens during its auto combos that brings in Shenron of all shit that just happens and it looks fucking incredible. You will never see most of these things happen if you just play the game. You will never see it. But they're there. And they're there because it loves itself. Like, it loves Dragon Ball, dude. It loves the way this shit, it loves what Dragon Ball, it's like the most fan servicey thing ever, and it feels like it tries so hard from a visual standpoint to match everything that the entire fiction ever has provided. It is such a lightning in a bottle game visually. I go back and I look at it now, and you just take a step back away, and you reevaluate the way it looks, and it blows my mind. I'm like, dude, we're never getting a game that looks like this ever again. And I get it why some people would maybe not like it, because maybe it's a bit too much. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of crazy bullshit all over the place. But to me, fighting games that match a level of physicality and over-the-topness, I really appreciate. In my opinion, the best example of a 1v1, these dudes and chicks are beating the shit out of each other. And you really feel the impact of those individual punches, those supers, those little tiny moments. You feel so cool when you do this one thing and parry that one thing and move to the next. It feels like we're fighting. But this pushes everything to like 13. It goes to 13, dude. The presentation of the whole game is just absolutely insane. Even like just the aspect of we're gonna remove incoming mix on characters, so when one character dies, this bitch comes flying in, that bitch comes flying in, boom, we're fighting now. Like, wow, that's so cool. This is so cool. I could glaze the shit out of this game for days. I love it. And for like all of the naysayers of hit sparks are too big or this stuff is too much, it's like, yeah, but when it's done well, it makes shit look incredible. It makes shit look like every single aspect of it just goes so above and beyond that. It's insane, dude. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ is the best looking fighting game of all time. I've taken about a bit of my personal taste. More Marvel vs. Capcom games would probably be up here, but I can't deny that some of the visuals and like representations and weird games like MK11, I just think look so good. I wish my favorite NRS game always looked like MK11. Like, I'm pissed. I'm pissed that MKX doesn't look like MK11, which is why I have to put it up here. That's my overall top 10 fighting game list for fighting game visuals, which I think games that are really, really, really held by very captivating visuals and overall design. I think Street Fighter VI is some of the best looking characters ever. I think MK11 is some of the best realistic looking visuals ever I've seen in a fighting game. Skullgirl is some of the best 2D animation I've ever seen in a fighting game with so much of it. Fatal Fury is some of the best of the old school SNK. Soulcalibur, obviously. KOF XIII, some of the best like modern day 2D visuals, bar none. Vampire Savior, the best, most unique looking fighting game up here of all of them. It's the most unique. Granblue Fantasy of the Ultra Arc System Works 2D, HD 2D visuals. Street Fighter III Third Strike for just one of the best looking games ever, period, from a visual standpoint of fighting. And Dragon Ball just has it all. It just has everything, and it dials it to 12 or 13. Ugliest fighting games. Oh no. I might have to do that at some point. But Sam, dude. Oh no! Oh no! Those are ugly fuckers. Oh no! Oh man, some are coming to mind. Oh no! Oh shit, dude. I would get hate for, oh damn, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, bro.